right, good evening, folks. This is Adam Wason, Public Works Director for the City of Bloomington. It is 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday, September 26, 2023. We are here in the City Council chambers of Bloomington City Hall for the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Public Works. We also have a Zoom link on the agenda for tonight's meeting for those that wish to attend virtually. It looks like we've got some folks on the virtual meeting, and so with that, there will be several opportunities for public comment tonight, including as agenda item number 3, petitions and remonstrances. That is for items that are not on tonight's agenda. And then the consent agenda will have the opportunity for public comment, and then each of the items on new business would have the opportunity for public comment. With that, okay. I will turn it over to Board President Kyla Cox-Deckard for tonight's meeting.
I call to order this regular meeting of the Board of Public Works this Tuesday, September 26th of 2023. First up, we have the opening of sealed bids. This is for restorative roof coating at Fire Station number 2. All right, we received 2 quotes. The first one is from Ancris LLC. It is in the amount of $138,000. The second quote is from B&L Sheet Metal and Roofing. It is in the amount of $161,900.
And bring those back at the next meeting for hopefully a bid to award.
Thank you. Next up is messages from board members. Do we have any messages from the board this evening?
I have none.
Next up is petitions and remonstrances. If anyone has any public comment on something that is not on the agenda this evening, now is the opportunity to do so. If you have public comment and you're on Zoom, you're welcome to use the raised hand function or the chat function. If you are here in the room, you are welcome to approach the microphone. Again, this is for public comment on anything not on the agenda. And if you can please state your name.
David Ebbinghaus. I spoke at the last meeting, and I want to thank you for tabling the motion for the variance to start the infrastructure upgrades at the north end of Miller Showers Park. Unfortunately, because of a lot of reasons, we weren't able to have a good public engagement on this project. COVID, the fact that our paper is kind of anemic and doesn't report everything that's going on, left a lot of us in the dark until we read about it, and I was one of those people.
So, sir, I'm going to apologize. That item is actually on tonight's agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get the agenda.
Well,
Sorry.
That's okay. So there will be an opportunity for public comment during that time.
Oh, okay.
How do you want to proceed?
If we can go ahead and let him finish his comment, that would be fine.
Okay.
I realize that you might also be speaking about things that are a little bit outside of the scope of our item, and so please go ahead and finish your comment.
Anyway, this is one of the few places I can interface with the city government, so I appreciate your tolerance. So basically, we have no problem. The people that have, I didn't mean to become a lightning rod for this issue, but just by chance, I've been hearing from a lot of people about this, and they're really upset about it. So basically, what we want to do is not have the tower. And the money for the parks is fine. Everybody loves the parks. And a $500,000 upgrade to the north end of Miller Showers is most welcome. But the aesthetics of it, the placement of it, the design of it, the process by which it was selected, all of these things are troubling to the community. So unfortunately, I'm the spokesperson for this point of view. So thank you for listening to my opinion. I know there's nothing you can do except to maybe table the motion again or even deny it. But I know public pressure is you're going to have to bow to public pressure eventually. But I appreciate the fact that we got a breather to focus our public opinion. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comments on items that are not on the agenda? Okay. Seeing none. Next up is the consent agenda. Under the consent agenda is the approval of minutes for July 18th, 2023, approval of minutes for August 1st, 2023, approval of minutes for August 15th, 2023, approval of minutes for August 29th of 2023, and approval of minutes for September 12th of 2023. We also have the alley closure request from Economic and Sustainable Development for a mural project. Resolution 2023-65, renew mobile vendor Top Shotta Jerk Chicken. Resolution 2023-66, renew mobile vendor Arepa Burger. Resolution 2023-67, declaration of Bloomington Fire Department surplus. Noise permit request for Harmony School extravaganza, and approval of payroll. Do we have any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda this evening? Okay. Is there any public comment on anything within the consent agenda?
There's nothing else I have.
Seeing none. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda for tonight's meeting of September 26, 2023.
And I second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next up under new business is notice of offering real estate for sale, Bloomington Police Department property with extended departure date.
Hi, good evening. Alex Pratt with City Legal. So the city is requesting approval to publish a notice of offering for sale. The real estate located at 220 East 3rd Street. That's the current site of the Bloomington Police Department headquarters. The sale will help finance the redevelopment of the Showers West building. Per statute, the notice needs to be published 2 times, at least 1 week apart, with the second publication made at least 7 days before the date the bids will be received. So staff is proposing the notice that's included in the packet to be published in the HT on September 29th and then on October 6th. And then bids can be received beginning October 13th. For up to 60 days or until December 12th. I can answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Questions from the board on this item?
Could you just clarify that offers can be received for up to 60 days through the sale period, but our board may recommend acceptance of an offer received at any time during the sale period? Can you confirm what that means for me, please?
So what that allows is for bids to continue to be received, but in the event that the bid looks good, then staff can bring that to attention to the board, and the board can consider accepting the bid at that point.
So even before that open period of 60 days
That's
is over?
correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
This item mentions the term extended departure date. Can you just talk a little bit about what that means for this?
Can you point me to
Yeah,
where
in
it says,
in the title of the item, notice of offering real estate for sale, Bloomington Police Department property with extended departure date. I'm assuming that that has some sort of implication as to conveying to the purchaser that there needs to be a period of time, a window of time where it's not transferred and occupied.
Correct.
But I'd just like to hear a little bit more about what that means.
Yes, what that means is there will be time allowed for the Showers West building to be completed and for the headquarters to be officially moved before any kind of transfer can be completed. So the sale of the building doesn't mean that in the event the West Showers building is not ready, the headquarters won't have anywhere to go.
And so that would be built in as part of the purchase agreement that occupancy is contingent on, I'm at a loss for words right now. Occupancy is contingent on the departure of the police department from that facility.
I believe that would be made clear in the purchase agreement, yes.
So I don't know if this is for staff or for legal, but what we are voting on tonight is simply approving the notice of publication for sale. And then what entity at the city then collects the bid documents as they come in?
I believe they would come ultimately to the board, but staff would also be privy to them, and staff will be able to recommend any bid that looks acceptable to the board.
Okay, thank you.
And just to fully clarify the process, so, this is somewhat of a question, more of a statement, but if I say anything wrong here. So this is asking the Board of Public Works to approve the notice of offering. So this is the publication of the real estate being offered for consideration of sale. From there, the offers would come in during that time period, that there is the opportunity to work with entities that are putting forward offers to do that sooner than later, but while also being able to continue taking in other bids while those conversations are taking place. The next step for the Board of Public Works, if there was an acceptable offer to the city, that they would come back to the Board of Public Works with saying, we have an acceptable offer, we would like you to approve the accepted offer, which then would go to the City Council for a final approval and request to actually enter into the real estate transaction, which would then have the terms of the extended departure. You didn't disagree with anything I said?
That seems
All right,
right.
that's
yeah.
always great. Yes.
Clarification. All right, any other questions from the board at this point? All right, now is an opportunity for public comment on this item. If you have a public comment, again, if you're on Zoom, you can use the raised hand function or the chat function. If you're here in person, you can approach the microphone.
Good evening. Dave Askins with the B Square Bulletin. Appreciate that Director Wason answered, I think, almost every question I had by taking through the full process. So I just wanted to confirm this has to go in front of the City Council. The City Council would have to, by a simple majority, approve the sale. And I also just wanted to clarify, just because earlier today there was a bid opening for the tech center, and these were sealed bids, and with great drama, they were all opened and read aloud. My understanding is that's not the kind of process we have going on here, that they will be opened as they come in, evaluated, and if there's a good one, the city wants to be able to act on it. I just want to clarify 100% that that's in fact what's going to happen. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we get clarification on that process of the opening of the offers?
Good evening, Larry Allen, Deputy Mayor. This is a little bit the inverse of what we're used to with public bids. So normally when it's a construction bid, that's governed by a particular statute where you're opening all of them on one day. The difference here is that it's creating an opening period where essentially this first notice period gives 2 weeks of notice to announce that we will begin accepting bids on October 13th, and then that will run for a period of 60 days where we can consider it. So it is a little bit different. There's also provisions for if an offeror gives a bid, there's multiple bids received, they can increase their bid to be more competitive. We just have to notify all of the other bidders in writing of that. So there are just statutory provisions that we have to follow in that regard. And to confirm, yes, City Council does have to approve this.
Is there an easy way to explain how you decide which bid process governs what bid process? What opening process governs this bid that we open in front of the public, the tech center, which is open in front of the public?
Yeah, this is just, it's a really specific statute for the disposal of real estate by
it.
the city broadly, and so that's the statute that we're operating under versus the bid openings for construction contracts are a separate title, separate statute that we have to also follow for those types of bids.
Other public comment on this item? And if you'll please state your name for our record.
Okay. Hi, my name is Sally Jones, and I'm a citizen of Bloomington. And I actually have a question. I'm not sure who to address it to, but I guess I have a question really about the timeline, about why is it important that the bids go out in October if there's not a date set yet for when the police department can move? Is there a reason that I should know about and don't know about, or whatever is obvious to everybody else? It would seem to me like when you're buying a house, you don't sell your house before you pack your furniture and get ready to go and have at least a date, you know, and have a place to go. But that doesn't seem to be what's happening here. That seems like, well, we know they have to leave, and we may have a place ready, we may have to extend it. So I'm just understanding, is there a reason why the building has to go up for sale in October? Is there not a reason why it couldn't wait? Is there a fiscal reason why it can't wait till we have more information and a building, a place ready for the police to go? I know that this was also a controversial, I didn't pay attention to it except to read about it in the paper, was a controversial issue when it came up, that, you know, there was controversy about the new building and whether it would serve the needs of the community and the police. So I'm just kind of wondering if it wouldn't, you know, why we're in a hurry.
So I'll just take a moment here to make a statement. Generally, the public comment period is usually not utilized for a question and answer back and forth, but we try to, when we have answers, try to make sure we can provide them as they come up. But traditionally, it's not usually just a question and answer back and forth. It's more of just being able to make the public comment. With that said, and as indicated in the staff report and was presented to the city council when the purchase of the West Showers was approved, is that the funding, that the funds from the sale of this property are going to be used to help fund the renovation and of the West Showers portion of the building for the police and fire's headquarters. And that's been planned for part of the process the entire time, and is the reason, and Larry, correct me if I'm wrong here, the reason that the extended departure date language is included. It's so that the property can be sold, that the proceeds of the sale can then go to the renovation of the facility for future use, and then at that extended departure date, actually go through the real estate the property transfer to the entity that makes the purchase. Thank you.
Thanks for that response. Any other public comment? Is there a item in the chat?
Question from chat, and that is from Libby. Who decides what constitutes a good bid?
That's all outlined in the proposal process. That's where the city has the ability to review the bids and find the highest and best offer. And as Deputy Mayor Allen mentioned, that if there are multiple offers, that they can then reach out to all the other bidders to let them know that there is a higher offer and if there's counters that are needed. So thank you. And any other, oh, it's not a work session. I'm not running the meeting.
I'll hand over the keys now. Any other public comment on this item?
There's nothing else on
see none here. Do we have a motion on this item?
I move that we approve the notice of offering real estate for sale on the Bloomington Police Department property with extended departure date.
And I second. We have a motion and a second, so I will call the roll. Corone?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next up is change order number 1 to balance the Henderson Street Greenway project.
Jason Kerr, Engineering. This project was listed as a high-priority bicycle network connection in the city's transportation plan. The project provided a connection in the east-west Smith and Hunter neighborhood greenway to connect between Hunter and Smith Avenue. The project was awarded to Rivertown Construction, LLC, on 11/7 of '22. Project has been completed and was on schedule. This is a balancing change order at the end of the South Henderson Street Greenway project. Change order is the deductible amount of $2,413.61 under the project's authorized amount. The authorized amount was $193,994.54. With this deduction, it brings it down to a total of $191,580.93.
Thank you. Questions from the board on this item? Okay. Any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve change order number 1 to balance the Henderson Street Greenway project.
And I second. We have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Corone?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next up, we have change order number 2 to balance the Allen Street Greenway project.
Jason Kerr again from Engineering. This project was constructing neighborhood greenway improvements consisting of speed cushions, curb bump outs, rain gardens, modified the median island there at Rogers and Allen, pavement markings and signage as well along West Allen between Patterson and Walnut. Project was awarded to E&B Paving on 11/22 of '22. Project is complete on schedule. This is a balancing change order at the end of the West Allen Street Greenway project. Change order is in the deductible amount of $1,764 below the authorized amount. The authorized amount was $291,833.98. That included one previous change order for a stormwater pipe repair. With this change order, the total balance comes down to $290,069.98 in total.
Thank you. Questions from the board on this item? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve change order number 2 to balance the Allen Street Greenway project.
And I second. We have a motion and a second. I will call the roll. Corone?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have request from Shamrock Builders for dumpster placement in right-of-way at 201 North Morton Street. This is October 2nd of 2023 through January 15th of 2024.
Hi, yes, Mike Stewart here with the engineering department. So Shamrock Builders is requesting the use of one metered space on North Morton. This is in the northwest corner of 6th Street in Morton for the placement of a dumpster for a remodeling, interior remodel where a new dentist office will be coming in. So in this process, typically if they need a space for a longer time than 2 weeks, engineering brings it to the Board of Public Works. They still will pay meter fees to parking services as they typically do. So I believe it's $20 a day that it goes in. But just once it hits that 2-week threshold, we bring it here. They will, as with any construction job, it's going to be kind of on and off when they'll actually need it. So the dates that they provided were estimates of when they'll likely need it. So it will cover a fairly large period, but we're looking most likely around October 2nd to November 15th, and then again, once they hit the end of it, from December 15th through January 15th. Again, there'll be periods where it's there and periods where it's not. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions on this item?
So this is obviously, I think, a busy couple of blocks, especially with the the 7 line coming in and Morton Street. I just want to make sure that having a dumpster there won't block any sight lines.
No, it doesn't appear to. So this is actually, it's not quite on the intersection. It's one space removed because there's actually an accessible space that's at the intersection, so that one remains open. The dumpster shouldn't extend beyond any, where a typical vehicle would be. It's been there for the past week or so since Parking Services is able to approve for up to the 2 weeks.
Okay, and you've heard no issues with the dumpster currently
I've
there?
heard no issues and I've seen no issues.
Great.
I walk by there daily. And
Okay, thank you.
Any public comment on this item?
There's nothing on Zoom.
Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the request from Shamrock Builders for dumpster placement in the right-of-way at 201 North Morton Street from October 2nd, 2023 to January 15, 2024.
And I second. I'll call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard, aye. The motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is lane and sidewalk closure request from Reed & Sons for the Bloomington Gateway Project at Miller Showers Park. This is September 27th of 2023 through December 22nd of 2023.
Good evening, Public Works Director. And I just wanted to start off with some general comments and recognize that this has been an issue that's received a lot of attention from the public over the last several weeks, and appreciate the board's diligence in the matter. I know this is a topic that has a lot of residents on varying sides of an issue, and I want to just start off where I think one of the things that the city as a whole probably should have done better here is, there was some comment that this is a public art piece. And that term was used. We've talked internally, and I think I just want to make a point that we have a very vibrant artist community, and I think if we all had it to do differently, that this would always just be referred to as the Gateway Project. This is a welcome sign to Bloomington, and the aesthetics of which can be debated by all. And if it wasn't Bloomington, I wouldn't expect that anything different would happen than a good debate about an issue. So just wanted to start with a general comment there. And I also wanted to add that, to make some additional comments to say that, the Board of Public Works is tasked with reviewing a lot of different things on behalf of the city administration and the city as a whole. And that includes things like use of the public right-of-way. And what is being asked tonight is that the board consider a use of the public right-of-way to install improvements to the right-of-way, as well as to facilitate the installation of the gateway piece. There's been a lot of discussion since our last meeting. I want to give a lot of credit to city staff and to others. There's been a lot of discussion about the issues that have been raised, whether it was by the public or by the board, from everything of the migratory patterns of birds to downlighting of the structure to what the public benefits of the public improvements are, and how that is also impacted by the future conversation about the College and Walnut corridor study, which is currently underway, being led by the Planning and Transportation Department. So recognizing that there are a lot of different issues that have been associated with the project, just wanted to make the reminder to the board and to the public that the Board of Public Works did not approve contracts for this project. That's not in the purview of the board, in the sense that this is a Parks and Recreation Department-led project that is governed, the contracts of which are governed and approved by the Board of Parks Commissioners. This was not a project that the Board of Public Works was asked to review from an aesthetics perspective. That's not the role that the board is asked to play as part of their charter and state statute for boards of public works. What is being asked of the board is to consider the use of the right-of-way and the public improvements that are associated with it as part of this project. But I also wanted to mention that, there's a lot of conversation about what the what the project is and what the project isn't, and what some of the benefits are. And so with this project, And the, my concern as the Public Works Director is what is the, not that I don't concern myself with other items of community conversation, but, what is the improvement to the right-of-way? What are the improvements that will require Public Works to maintain into the future? What are the benefits to the residents of the area and the community as a whole? We know with this project, after a lot of discussion internally, that there are pedestrian and transportation benefits that go beyond, that improve the entire area, whether it's updated ADA ramps with detectable warnings that meet current standard. It improves the refuge island in the crossover for better pedestrian access and better sight lines. It installs streetlights. It installs streetlights for better safety in the area for pedestrian travel, but some of the other smaller things that are included with this project that may seem small, but are also pretty big items too. It includes the removal of invasive calorie repair trees. Something we've not talked about yet, but these are invasive trees that have been planted all over Bloomington that create a lot of problems with the stability of the trees during storms and other things. It'll plant 26 new native trees with 8 flowering type species that we worked with the Tree Commission on. It's got limestone block installations and 9 types of native plants. And in the end, it's a gateway project for the city. That is what it is. It's a gateway project that announces you're in Bloomington and such. And it's been designed and worked with on a firm that does this in multiple communities, and we've got lots of examples of the work they've done. I want to give a lot of credit to Tim Street and the staff in Parks for hearing the public comments that have come and answering those and coming up with some really great responses and information for folks to understand. There is no uplighting with this project. The lighting is LED and draws the equivalent power of about 2.5 LED streetlights. So there's some question on whether it be solar powered or not, but that LED is, an energy efficient design. The lights are covered in translucent acrylic and then laser cut metal panel, and that breaks up the profile or the clear area that the conversation around the bird flight patterns went into. And we have control over the lights, what color they are, when they're on, when they're off. Things like that. But that's the work of Parks and their team to really kind of outline what the project is, what the project isn't, whether or not, and it's understandable that the community has brought concerns and wants to have further dialogue about this project, and I appreciate that the board did allow that with a couple more weeks. I'll also note that in conversation with the engineering staff and other transportation professionals, that when we consider the possible impacts of the College and Walnut Corridor study, the public improvements related to this project, even if they were only, if it was a 5-year or a 7-year, these are short-term improvements that are going to benefit a lot of residents in the area with better accessibility to transit stops and better safety crossings of the busy corridor that is College Walnut, and a lot of other safety factors. And so those short-term benefits are something that we very much value, very much look forward to, So I'll cut my comments there. I do recognize this has been a topic of great controversy, that the overall project has really gotten the community talking about this. Parks has done a great job of letting folks know what the process was to this point. This goes back to 2018. It's been a long period of time since the original funding was obligated for these gateway pieces. There's been a lot of effort put into getting information out there, and when it was time for the project to go forward, this is when the community's really come out and provided some comments. With all that said, it is to the board for decisions on how the public right-of-way is used. We do request your approval this evening, and I'll leave my comments at that. So thank you.
Thank you. did want to ask about information. I know there were lots of questions from the public about the project, and I know, Adam, you mentioned several of the items in your remarks. I'm wondering, is this information available in a place that the public can go to read more about the project?
I'm calling Tim Street to
Okay.
the podium because
Thank you.
Tim knows exactly where all that information is and all the efforts that have been undertaken.
Sure, thank you. Tim Street, Operations Director for Bloomington Parks. I have worked, as we've corresponded with people over the last couple weeks and received questions and inquiries, particularly for themes that have come up again from different folks, to collate that information on the project website. So if you go to the parks website and then there's a project link on the front or a Bicentennial Gateways link on the front, it will take you to that page that has the timeline of some information, the press releases, and then some of the sort of common questions and concerns at the bottom. And if we hear more and we hear more questions and concerns, we can sort of address some of those things there. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for
Yep.
that. So one of the main concerns that I mentioned at the last meeting was the College and Walnut Corridor study, that this is an activity that the Board of Public Works authorized a contract to study the corridor. We're now into a phase of committee review of that corridor. And I had some concerns about how those two activities were going to intersect, particularly as it relates to the right-of-way and the public improvements to that right-of-way. And so I know you mentioned in your comments that this is something that, the benefits of the work that's being done outweigh any kind of update that might be suggested going into the future that might require a new review of this. So with that, I also wanted to clarify a little bit about, I appreciate the clarification that we've offered, I think, at both meetings, last meeting and this meeting, as to what the role of Public Works is, and being able to be sure that we are examining this from a Public Works perspective. So I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about the way that this update is communicated to the College and Walnut Corridor Committee, and how the city sees those interactions happening, as far as, since we've got this process underway, understanding how that committee is informed of and aware of some of these updates in order to make good decisions as they're working as well.
Yeah, so, the College and Walnut Corridor study is studying the area from the bypass to the north all the way down to Allen Street on the south. So a very large area of both of those main corridors, north-south corridors through the community. And so more specifically to your question, though, is, the Planning and Transportation Department is overseeing the College and Walnut Corridor study as the department with the contract with the design, with the company running that project. We're in a regular communication with the Planning and Transportation staff and hearing updates on the project from them, and very much will be proactive. If this were to go forward, we would be, they're aware, we would be certainly making the resident advisory committee, I don't know if that's the right term for what they are or not, if it's an advisory committee or a steering committee, I think they call it a steering committee for, a resident steering committee for the project that's studying the corridor, that these short-term improvements could also be considered into the longer-term aspects of that study. So with the, for example, the ADA improvements that are associated with this project, the not only the ADA ramps, but the crosswalks that get the folks across College and Walnut, the internal sidewalks, the additional ADA ramps, the improvement of the crossover pedestrian refuge island, all of those aspects, as well as the sidewalk on the west side of Walnut that is going to be installed to help with the pedestrian flow during this project and into the future for just pedestrian travel. Like, all of those aspects are going to be communicated to not only the steering committee, but are part of the conversation with the planning and transportation staff as we've gotten to this point. Throughout this whole process, we've been having those conversations of what are the impacts, what are the current improvements, what could the potential future improvements be, while very much unknown because it's under that study, it's in a study pattern right now. The only other comments I'd offer there are, and I mentioned this, I believe at our last meeting, but the College and Walnut corridor study is just that right now. It's a study of the whole corridor. So it is not in engineering design of any aspects of that project. It has not identified any areas to be the priorities yet or not. It's just very much in a preliminary study process. Projects that we've done in the past that are corridor type projects, and this goes back many years, but we, early in my career in city government, we looked at the Rogers Street corridor from 11th Street, actually I think it was from 17th all the way down to south of Grimes, maybe even all the way down to Country Club. And that project had a lot of different aspects to it and suggested improvements, but it was pieced off over time because it was such a big project. A project like the College and Walnut without the study even having identified any specific projects or design needs for the College and Walnut corridor, we would be years, if not long, we would be many, many years away from getting to a point of construction documents being ready to go out to bid for any projects related to that corridor study. That's that short-term, long-term that I've been kind of referring to. If the project were, if the whole corridor was studied and recommended to be one project that takes on the whole apple of the corridor improvements, you're looking at probably a multiple tens of millions of dollars of project there. I can't ever imagine that it would end up in that form. What I imagine is that it would be pieced off into smaller projects that would then need to identify funding sources, whether MPO or other grant funding or regular city funding to implement them. And when I talk about that 3 to 5 plus year time frame, that's what I'm referring to, is getting from a corridor study to an engineered construction document out to bid perspective to actually constructing anything. So I know that's going beyond just your basic question of what are those improvements and how are they going to be communicated to that group, but just the whole process and the whole of the corridor study is quite expansive, in basic terms.
Yeah, understandable. Okay, thank you. I don't want to hog all the questions. If you have any questions,
I have a statement, which I'm happy to read now or after public.
I think
Yeah, I'll ask a couple more questions. We'll open it up. I am assuming we've got some public comment on this item. It is my belief, and this can be confirmed or denied, it is my belief that the gateway element, the gateway element that's being fabricated, could be installed without these public improvements being made, which means, I just want to clarify what that means for the role of the Board of Public Works, which means that the Board of Public Works, even if the board does not grant access to right-of-way, the structural element of the gateway can still be installed.
I don't know that that's a true statement. I think that some basic permitted activities of use of the right-of-way would still be needed to get the structure in place to be installed.
And I know this is like, I know that this is a public, question that is in the minds of everyone is, is the structure something that can be placed even if, and I do want to say the public improvements that are being proposed are positive ones. Like, I do want to make sure to clarify that. What's happening that's proposed in the crosswalks, the ADA ramps, many of these elements would be improvements to this area. I think that's, in my opinion, indisputable.
Yep.
That these are improvements.
I agree.
And I think that something that the public is curious about is this something that is installable with or without Public Works, offering a approval, I guess.
Sure, certainly, some of the public improvements obviously would not be doable without a right-of-way permit. I mean, I would honestly have to explore that question further. I don't believe that the location of the gateway sits within the right-of-way itself. That, in and of itself, would not require a closure. What might require a closure is at least a lane closure or something similar for a crane for the installation of that element itself. However, some of the corresponding sidewalk improvements to get to it, I would have to tease out a little bit further, and it sort of comes down to what is internal to the park and what is the right-of-way, and where does that line sort of exist, which is sometimes hard to tease out.
Yeah, and I totally understand that's, again, asking for kind of a splitting of hairs potentially in that particular area. Is this request, does that include the lane closure you mentioned and the accessibility to the crane? Because I didn't see anything like that, so I'm just curious when that...
I don't believe is in this. I would have to talk to Reed and Sons about that further down when it comes to the installation itself. This was to prepare the site, to get the foundations ready, to do all the other corresponding work that, in looking at this as a gateway project to Bloomington, it wasn't just about the piece itself, but it was about how do we make holistic improvements as you come into town.
Sure.
Yeah.
So then, does that mean that we will have another item for the lane closure and the crane?
So, and Alex, you may be needed here as well. I don't think so. My understanding was that with the way that the closure would work with the crossover and everything else, that there wouldn't be additional lane closure. I don't believe there was a need for additional lane closures on Walnut or College that they would probably do that internally to what they're being approved for here. But I could confirm that. Alex?
Yeah. Well, and part of that is that we're working with two contractors as well. Of course, one is Reed and Sons, who are responsible for the site creation, the foundational elements and everything, and then Bomar itself is responsible for the installation, which is still some ways off.
Right,
so possibly.
Yes.
So it may not be Reed and Sons who needs the right-of-way approval. It may be Bomar that is requesting the right-of-way approval. Okay, I'm glad I asked that question because I feel like that's something that I hadn't traveled all the way to that point in the process yet. Something else I just wanted to clarify too is that we had, so I shouldn't say we, it was not the Board of Public Works, although I think maybe Public Works internally or staff was able to authorize the permit for the sidewalk that is along what we call the Steak and Shake property there as part of this project, both as an improvement, but also because it offers a way of accessing an area that would not be accessible during the project, I think is the best way to describe that. So that permit is not one that is authorized by the Board of Public Works, but it was temporarily paused in light of the tabling 2 weeks ago of this particular item. So I just wanted to ask for clarification. Is that item contingent upon this item? Or is that something that the city intends on moving forward with the permitting as it exists?
So a couple comments there. You are very correct that the permit to construct the sidewalk on the west side of Walnut Street did not require the Board of Public Works approval because it was at a staff level for that type of project. It didn't require lane lane closure, there's a flow chart we use on what comes to the Board of Public Works and what does not. The construction of that sidewalk did not need to come to the Board of Public Works. It had been approved at a staff level prior to last week's meeting for the contractor to go forth and begin so that they could get that constructed in advance of the further closures, which then provides the pedestrian accessibility needed on the west side of Walnut Street during this project. So, but as soon as it was the very next morning of the Board of Public Works meeting where we kind of had an aha moment of the contractors proceeding with that because it's under a separate permit that it didn't require the board's approval, and I very quickly realized the optics of that could look pretty poor in the public's mind if the board had delayed action, but yet we were going forward with that aspect of the project. I don't know I couldn't give you an answer today on whether or not we're going to push forward with that sidewalk project, which is predicated by that sidewalk project is predicated first and foremost for use during the construction of this project for pedestrian accessibility. But then there is the long-term benefit of having that new sidewalk that doesn't exist at all right now. But I couldn't tell you one way or the other if this project's not moving forward, if we, at what point would we decide if that is still in a cost-benefit analysis kind of respect of, is it still worth putting in if this isn't going forward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that. All right, I think, so this was question period. I think I may move to public comment, and then we can do board comments here in a second. So I would welcome public comment on this item. I don't know exactly how many people we have who are interested in making public comment. If you are in person and could just wave your hand if you were planning on making a public comment on this item, that will help me. And then if you're on Zoom and interested in making a public comment, if you could indicate with either the raised hand function or a note in the chat, we would be able to see what we have in public comment.
Looked like we had one in the room and at least one online.
Okay. So we'll first take public comment in the room. If the member who would like to make public comment can come forward and state your name.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Sally Jones, and I live here in Bloomington, Indiana. And I feel like I have a lot to say, but fortunately for all of us, I'm saving this for most of my comments for letters and emails to public officials. I think that there's enough, for me, things that are not clear, questions that you're asking that I'm not quite sure I understand that if there are answers that they've been answered. So I'd like to make a very simple comment, and that is that I would really like the board to deny any variances until alternatives to the monolithic structure can be considered. Not just any alternatives can be, the whole idea is not necessarily a bad one, and we hear about, we're gonna cut down some cow repairs and we're gonna make a sidewalk, and all those things sound wonderful, and they probably are wonderful, and they'd be good for Bloomington. But it's kind of like we've wrapped this awful thing, in a nice package, and you have to take the whole thing. And I think the public, regardless of what you might say, I'm someone who used to work for the city. I've lived here all my life. I read the paper, and I have not found it easy to get information about this project and have only known about it for about 2 weeks. So it may have been talked about somewhere in some meeting in 2018, but it's not because it's my fault that the city government didn't pay enough attention to the fact that they're going to borrow $1 million and expect me to pay it back and other taxpayers. So there's a lot to consider here. There's a lot of pros and cons. And I think at this time, I realize you don't control much of this project. And I'd just like to ask you what part you do control, if you could just hit the pause button by denying any variances until we can have a conversation about it and the public can really participate.
Thank you for your comment. We have a public comment on Zoom, is that correct?
We do. Susan, I've asked you to unmute, and if you would like to speak, you may do so.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thanks.
Thanks for this opportunity. My name is Susan Brackney. I want to thank you for having the courage to table this issue during your last meeting. I don't have to imagine the kind of pressure you've been under to go ahead and greenlight this thing. To get a better handle on what we've been told is inevitable, I went to the park at night and stood roughly where the illuminated tower is slated to be, because I still have some concerns about light pollution and harm to wildlife, etc. I wanted to see how dark it is there. I wanted to see how many lumens might be required in order to compete with the other light sources in the area. And if you haven't already done so, I encourage you to visit the site at night yourselves with this sort of thing in mind. The land configuration is even more narrow there than I had remembered. It'd been a while. There was a ton of traffic whizzing by so fast, and I honestly didn't feel very safe standing there. As I understand it, the illuminated portions of the tower would be facing oncoming traffic. I'm not sure, I might not have that right. But depending on the weather and how bright the tower will be, I'm a little concerned that it could be a hazard for drivers, particularly those traveling at night. And it raised some questions, more questions, I apologize. If the illuminated tower contributes to pedestrian injuries or traffic accidents, how will that problem be corrected? Is the city adequately protected, or do changes need to be made to existing insurance policies to reduce its liability? I also wondered about the maintenance required for the LED fixture. Do certain letters burn out individually, or does the whole thing burn out at once? And how much does that cost to fix? What long-term upkeep will be necessary? Has that been provided for in the budget in some way? And as unpopular as this monolith seems to be, I'm wondering if it will be a target for vandals. What would keep someone kind of crazy from trying to climb it and, God forbid, do themselves harm? Anyway, as I see it, there are still a lot of important and as yet unanswered questions that need to be addressed before rushing to complete this project. It was initiated 5 years ago, then it was put on hold and later restarted. And I just want to say, if it could be put on hold once, why couldn't it be put on hold again? Are these issues serious enough to warrant a little extra scrutiny, maybe by the incoming mayor and their administration? I think so. Thanks for this opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
There are no additional comments.
All right, thank you. So, it's not unknown that I've had lots of questions. I've peppered many people with lots of questions. I think there are a lot of questions in general about this project. First of all, I want to say I respect the sovereignty of the Board of Park Commissioners. So the Board of Park Commissioners has an important role in this. They are the ones who are tasked with the project in the sense of it being a gateway project. And I'm not in the position to question or second guess the decisions that they've gone through to make during this process. So I do just want to put that out there that I respect their decisions as I anticipate that they respect my decisions as well, serving on this board, which is looking at, a variety of different issues and different concerns. So I just wanted to say that. I also want to say that I have really respected the amount of information that I have been able to receive when asking questions of staff, and the amount of additional information that staff has been able to present, both Public Works and Parks, and everyone who has, not the least of which engineering, I should say, Andrew Seabour, has offered a lot of important insights to this project. And, there are issues that I still am grappling with. I'm grappling with the timeline of this closure in the sense of the way that it impacts people traversing the right-of-way during this busy fall season. The length of time that it is being occupied and closed, is a concern of mine. As I expressed, I had concerns about the College and Walnut Corridor study and the ways that this might impact or change that process. I will say I do appreciate that the information of this project is going to be part of the College and Walnut Corridor Study Committee's review and understanding in what this might look like. So just want to offer that comment that I appreciate that modification has been made. I'm still a little bit unclear about the way that the right-of-way requests are going to move forward. This is one right-of-way request, but it sounds like there may be another right-of-way request, and I'm not sure that we know exactly what that looks like, or if that's going to be something that comes to fruition. So, I am still grappling with some of these questions and issues. I've appreciated everyone's public comments. I know that many of the public comments are outside of our purview, and as I mentioned, the Board of Park Commissioners has been doing a lot of work related to this initiative, and some of those comments are probably more aligned with the work that they are doing as opposed to the work that the board is reviewing. And I also know that there are definitely some positive benefits to the improvements that are being proposed in this right-of-way. So just offering the fact that I'm still trying to process this timeline and this information, and it's a complex project that has many different people involved and many different people looking at different purviews, and so I think that has made this a little bit difficult for us. And just want to reiterate my appreciation to everyone who has been involved in this process and trying to get us to the best possible point with this. As I do still have questions, specifically about the right-of-way access, I am not at a point that I'm ready to vote on this item. I would like to ask my fellow board member to consider tabling this item again.
I would like to take this moment to make my own statement then. Under Bloomington Municipal Code 210000, the Board of Public Works is established as the general administrative department for the following divisions, boards, commissions, and councils: sanitation, street, fleet maintenance, housing quality appeals, community arts, animal care and control, and all physical facilities with the exception of property managed by the Utility Service Board or the Board of Parks Commissioners, emphasis added. I take my role on this board very seriously, and I have a responsibility to our community to ask questions, work with Public Works and other city staff to deeply consider the items before us, and to listen. In the item before us tonight, we are being asked, appropriately so, to approve the use of the right-of-way to improve the public infrastructure within and around Miller Showers Park, as presented by our city's engineering department and referenced by our Public Works Department tonight. These approvals are within our purview as the Board of Public Works, as written in the code. We are not being asked for our approval to complete the gateway work within Miller Showers Park, which instead is under the purview of the Board of Park Commissioners. As a reminder, this Board of Public Works is statutorily defined to deliberate only those requests appropriate for our board to decide upon. It is important that my colleagues on other boards trust that I am not overreaching my purview, as I trust that they are making decisions for that which they have been statutorily defined. It is not up to me as a member of this board to consider the gateway work within Miller Showers Park. Questions or concerns about the relative merits of the gateway project, including its desirability, design, artistic merit, cost, and funding, are all topics for other statutorily established entities, elected officials, and city staff. It is up to this board to consider only the right-of-way requests before us. And thus, after taking time and a lot of thought to review the responsibility of this board as it relates to this project, I will be voting in favor of the right-of-way use tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. In light of those comments, I will call for a motion.
I move that we approve the lane and sidewalk closure request from Reed & Sons for the Bloomington Gateway Project at Miller Showers Park from September 27, 2023 to December 22, 2023.
There is no second. The motion fails. The next item on our agenda is lane and sidewalk closure request from Take-On at 613 East 12th Street. This is September 6th through October 2nd of 2023.
Gray from engineering. So Take-On is requesting a lane and sidewalk closure for the residents of 613 East 12th Street for utility connections across 12th and Fess. Primarily, the sidewalk will be on Fess, and then the actual lane closures will be on 12th. Because they're doing both the water and sanitary connections for this property. The reason why this is coming to the board, the lanes actually is within staff approval. It's actually the sidewalk part of it that has passed our threshold for approval with the staff level. So the reason also why it's taking 3 days for them to do it is because they have to actually rip out sections of the sidewalk. That way they can install their utility connections, and then it has to have time to form, cure, and then be opened up for pedestrian travel.
Thank you. Questions on this item? Any public comment on this item?
There is nothing on Zoom.
Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the lane and sidewalk closure request from Take-On at 613 East 12th Street from September 6th to October 2nd, 2023.
And I second. I will call the roll. Carone?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Resolution 2023-59, right-of-way encroachment request for Catalent Freezer Farm.
Hello, Maria McCormick from Engineering. We have a request from Catalent and Bill Riggert at Bledsoe, Riggert, Cooper, and James for a petition, or for approval of an encroachment agreement. They built the freezer farm along Allen Street, and the concrete planter wall encroaches on the city's right-of-way by 3¼ feet on one end and 1.70 a 1.75 feet on the other end. So they are asking permission for an encroachment. It's our standard encroachment agreement that we offer when there's private property that encroaches in the right-of-way.
Thank you. Questions on this item?
This is a tangential question. I may not be the only one who's wondering what a freezer farm is and would appreciate a quick explanation.
I have no idea.
Hi, I'm,
Everybody knows this answer. It's where they grow freezers.
hi, I'm Bill Riggert with Butzer Riggert Cooper James. And on behalf of Catalent, the freezer farm is, I think they're 48 like semi-trailers that are down to 40 degrees Celsius, minus 40 Celsius to store such things as the COVID vaccine for long-term storage. So the freezer farm is an enclosure that has all these trailers in it, and it's screened with a wall so that you don't see the sides of those. And then it has a corridor down the center that they can run a forklift down to pick up pallets and move them around. And the freezer farm then had this planter wall that ended up getting constructed within the right-of-way. So that's the problem.
Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
And I know, Maria, this is a typical encroachment agreement. If there's ever a need for it to be moved, that it's our standard encroachment agreement. So if there's any future need for the city to have that moved, it's at the expense of Catalent, et cetera. So,
Thank you. Public comment on this item?
There's nothing on Zoom.
Seeing none. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve Resolution 2023-59, the right-of-way encroachment request for Catalent Freezer Farm.
And I second. I will call the roll. Corone?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard? Aye. Motion passes. Next up is road and sidewalk closure request from Duke Energy at 1600 block of South Rogers Street. This is September 27th, 2023 through October 6th of 2023.
Energy is requesting a street and lane closure and sidewalk closures in the 1600 block of South Rogers Street to install additional poles. They're requesting approval for this work to take place, like you said, between September 27th and October 6th of 2023. They have an outage scheduled for placing the pole on the east side of the street on September 27th and hope to have this portion of the work done in a day. Then there will be intermittent closures of the lanes and the sidewalks on the west side of Rogers Street through October 6th to complete the poles that need to be placed on Rogers Street. This is part of the reliability project that has connected the three substations, South Rogers, 13th and Dunn, and North Rogers, where you've seen all the metal poles going up. It is our understanding that this is support work within the substation at South Rogers to complete that work. And we do ask that Duke give us 72 hours notice for the rolling closures, just so that we can update MCCSC and inroads. We've had a little bit of issue, but we're working on those so that we are not impeding pedestrian traffic and or school buses in any way in that fairly congested, this is right outside of Switchyard, so in that fairly congested area.
Thank you. Questions from the board on this item?
If there are residents and businesses along, what is that, the east side of the street, which is supposed to have an outage tomorrow, have they been notified in advance?
If you went, yeah, sorry, just so that everybody can hear, because we do have people on Zoom and recording, it'll be helpful. Thank you.
Hi,
And if you
thank
could just
you.
state your name.
Yeah, Liz Irwin, Duke Energy. So we do have a process to notify residents whenever there's an outage. It's handled through the IURC, so usually it's like a 2-day notification for an outage. So that's been scheduled already, so the notification should have gone out.
So it should have gone out in advance of tomorrow's closure, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any public comments on this item?
There's nothing on Zoom.
Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion?
Move that we approve the road and sidewalk closure request from Duke Energy at the 1600 block of South Rogers Street from September 27, 2023 to October 6, 2023.
I second. I will call the roll. Corone?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Next up is lane and sidewalk closure request from E&B Paving on South Rogers Street. This is October 30th, 2023 to November 30th, 2023.
Good evening. This is Dres Tahir with the engineering. E&B Paving is requesting a lane and sidewalk closure on south of Rogers Street between west of Hillside Drive and West Cherokee Drive to connect existing sidewalk across creek near Switchyard Park. And this will include the installation of culvert and sidewalk connection that will fill an existing void in the sidewalk leading north on south of Rogers Street from Switchyard Park. And the project will include lane closure in 1600 block of south of Rogers Street. And the work will take 30 days between October 30, 2023 and November 30, 2023. And the work is being done for the City of Bloomington Park Department, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions on this item? Any public comment on this item?
There's nothing on Zoom.
Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the lane and sidewalk closure request from E&B Paving on South Rogers Street from October 30th, 2023 to November 30th, 2023.
And I second. I will call the roll. Corone?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Next up is staff reports and other business.
Yep, again, Adam Wason, Public Works Director for the City of Bloomington. I just wanted to remind the community this weekend we've got, I don't know what year it is for the Lotus World Music and Arts Festival, but it's probably at least the 30-something year of Lotus World Music and Arts being in Bloomington. So their festival begins. They'll have some concerts earlier in the week, but the outdoor areas with public right-of-way closures will begin Friday evening. Well, the setup will begin Thursday, and then those concerts will be Friday and Saturday. So just want to remind the public of all that activity downtown this weekend, and to go enjoy some world music and just be prepared for some extra activity downtown.
Thank you. Next up, we have approval of claims. Are there any questions on the claims? I have none. Okay. Any public comment on claims?
There's nothing on Zoom.
Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve claims tonight in the amount of $1,401,911.97.
And I second. I will call the roll. Corone?
Aye.
Cox-Deckard, aye. Motion passes. And if there's nothing else this evening, I will call for adjournment.